Can I begin by thanking my colleagues for supporting this motion for debate this evening, and can I welcome to the gallery trustees and friends of the charity of MacDiarmid Brownsbank, including members of the Grieve family who have joined us this evening. They are the custodians of MacDiarmid's legacy, and their ambitions for his former cottage at Brownsbank in Biggar deserve our collective attention. I can also pay tribute to my friend and colleague Mary McCallan, MSP. Brownsbank Cottage sits within her Clydesdale constituency, and she's been an avid supporter of the work of the Trust and the restoration efforts, and we're excited to welcome her back to the Parliament soon. Today we reflect on a figure of international significance. I'm minded to listening a long time ago to Radio 4 to the book club, where James Robertson was interviewing Maya Angelou, and he introduced her as one of the greatest black writers of the 20th century. And she immediately picked him up and said, "I'm considered one of the best writers of the 20th century. I just happen to be black." And I think the same can be said of MacDiarmid. He writes mainly in Scots, but he's more than just a Scots writer. And Scots writers should be recognised for their international efforts and international challenge. And I'm minded that there's some of the greatest experts on MacDiarmid in the gallery this evening, and some of Scotland's greatest writers and professors of literature in Scots language, so no pressure at all on anyone speaking in the debate tonight to get things right. I attended a few weeks ago the Association of Scottish Literature International Lecture with Professor Johannes Ponkarova from the University of Glasgow and the University of Prague, who's a Marie Curie Fellow at Glasgow University. And she was speaking about Gaelic and Scots in the 20th and 21st centuries. And she had done a wealth of research on MacDiarmid and showed that he not only loved the Scots language and was committed to bringing that back into common usage and common parlance in Scotland, but they also had a great influence on the Gaelic revival in Scotland too, translating many of our Gaelic poets into Scots and sharing that in a number of publications and magazines that perhaps we weren't as familiar with as we are with some of MacDiarmid's other work. He was never a man to question, never afraid to question conventional ideas. He believed that reviving the Scots language and poetry wasn't about the literature, it was about reclaiming Scotland's artistic character, our culture, and to assert its independence and revitalise a literature that he saw weighed down by sentimentality. His vision was to move away from the overly sentimental writing of the past and create something bold, something uniquely Scottish. And his commitment to these ideals and his radical advocacy were the reasons why we now recognise the Scottish Renaissance in Scots language. MacDiarmid himself described this movement as a new insistence on the Scots Lowlands language. In the first place, and beyond that, on the need to restore Gaelic as the national language of Scotland and to resume it in the fullest way the great traditions of our lost heritage, Gaelic culture, and to apply these to new creative purposes. He saw language as the foundation of cultural revival, and his work embodied this belief. He was ever controversial. In fact, many of my colleagues knew him personally, and will talk that he was often a cantankerous character, shall we say. And his writings were often polemic, frequently contradictory, and enduringly influential. His passion wasn't just linguistic, it was political too. He was a founding member of the Scottish National Party, the National Party of Scotland, which became the Scottish National Party. And at the same time, he was a member of the Communist Party. And in 1964, he stood as a Communist Party candidate against the then Prime Minister, Sir Alex Douglas-Home. He believed that MacDiarmid believed that Scottish identity and the lives of the people who lived here were ill-served by the political establishment. His belief in the culture and political significance of language was unshakable, and its conviction is embodied in Brownsbank Cottage. It's an A-listed building, the only one in Britain to hold this status, not for its architectural significance, but the distinction of its former resident. The interior has been carefully preserved to reflect the character, and the two main rooms, those of MacDiarmid and his wife Valda Trevlyn, are there to be seen. The shelves in MacDiarmid's rooms were filled with green-spined penguin crime novels alongside copies of his own work. And today it is a cherished site of heritage, loved and respected, but not just by the people of Scotland, but by many, many beyond our borders. It has been a writer's residence for some of our greatest living writers, some of whom are in the gallery this evening, such as Matthew Fitt and James Robertson and Professor Alan Rioch as well. Writers' Fellowship nurture creativity, providing a space for writers to explore new styles and perspectives while shaping Scotland's ever-loving culture identity. We need to secure Brownsbank Cottage for the future of Scotland. And when I talk about the future of Scotland, I want to reflect, I'm sure there are some people may talk about the little white rose of Scotland, which I don't think this was quite MacDiarmid's view, but it's nonetheless adopted by the SNP as a symbol of our national party in this Parliament. And some may talk about, you know, a drunk man looks at the thistle. But having spent time with Matthew Fitt, who's in the gallery, in a primary school in my own constituency, Cleland Primary School, and seeing the young people working with him in Scots language and learning about it and learning about the language they used every day in their families, and seeing the joy and the confidence it gave them to know that the language they used at home was good. It made me think of maybe a MacDiarmid children's poem, which I'm going to quote before I finish. It's called The Bubbly Jock, which is a male turkey. It's half like a bird and half like a bogle. It just stands in the sun there and bouks. It's a wonder its head didn't burst, the way its eye racks in the tooth. Sign it twists its neck like a serpent, but canna get out a rick note, for the bubbly jock swallowed the bagpipes, and the blether gets stuck in its throat. Thank you very much, Presiding Officer.